ACP review. It says if f of x equals 8x cubed, which graph represents f negative 1 of x, which just means the inverse. Remember, this means inverse. Now, what you need to recall with inverse is that the inverse switches the x's and y's. So there's multiple ways we could do this. One is we could solve algebraically. And to solve algebraically, what we would do is we'd switch the x and y's and solve. So instead of this being y equals 8x cubed, you'd substitute with x equals 8y cubed, and then you would solve for y. So to solve for y, it doesn't look like much of a cube. Let me try that again. You would first get the y by itself. Now, this 8 is multiplying, so I would do the opposite, which is division. So I would first divide by 8, and so I'd have x over 8 equals y cubed. And now to get rid of a cube, you take a third root. So the opposite of a cube is, or the opposite of a power is a root, and since it's a third power, we do a third root. So I take the third root of both sides. Now the third root, we don't have a third root of x, but we do have a third root of 8. It's 2. So you could write this as the third root of x over 2 equals y, or the way we would actually probably write it is that we would substitute back the inverse is equal to 1/2 times the third root of x. Now that's what we'd be looking for. And you could just graph it to get the answer. That's one technique. Now let me show you a second technique. From the start, we could have gone and graphed the original equation, which is 8x cubed. So I'm going to go to my graph and type in 8x cubed. And we get this picture. Now we know that it means for inverse to switch x and y. So you can press Control T and switch some values. So for example, we have 1 and 8. So that means on the inverse I would have 8 and 1. So this would be solving by table. So instead of having 1 and 8, we would switch it and we would say we have 8 and 1 as a value. So we could look over and see that this is okay. This one's not okay, so H is out. Look over here, 8, 1. This one's G is also out. And over here, J is out. And so we know right away that the answer is F. And if we would have graphed this from the first method, we would have saw that that's a good answer. Now that's a second technique. And finally, the third technique is once you graph it, one thing you could also do is you could add another graph. The calculator can tell you the inverse by pressing menu, actions, text. Menu, actions, text. And what you type in is instead of saying f of x equals some equation, you flip it around. And so this is f of x or y equals something with an x. Instead you say x equals, and then you type this part in, f1. But instead of an x, we swap it with a y. Now I know when you press enter, it doesn't show anything, but you just have to drag it to the x-axis, and as soon as you do, that right there would be the answer. So the answer is in fact F.